All right, we are streaming on YouTube, but our recording is paused until we begin. Thank you for attending, everybody. Sorry for the few minutes late there. Our last meeting went a little bit over.
Okay, Ms. Turway, are we ready to start?
We are now recording and live on YouTube.
Okay. All right then. Good evening, everybody. I will call to order the Monday, January 11th, 2021 meeting of the Oregon City Planning Commission. And the first item on our agenda is selection of the Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair for 2021. So we will start with the office of Chair. Is there any comment or nomination from any of the planning commissioners?
I'd like to nominate Mike Mitchell to continue to serve as chair for 2021.
And I would like to pass that honor on. Not that I'm willing to do it. Strangely enough, I enjoy doing this. And my wife considers it a sickness, but I've done it for 2 years, and I would love to give someone else the opportunity. Well, I don't know about the appropriateness of me making a nomination, but I don't see anyone else, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I would like to nominate Dirk Schlagenhofer for chair for 2021.
I'll second that.
Are there any further nominations? Commissioner Schlagenhofer, anything you want to say?
I don't think I'm the better man, but I will accept the nomination. Thank you.
Any other comments from any of the planning commissioners?
I have a comment.
Commissioner Staggs.
Yeah, I think Dirk will do a great job. He's been doing this for a while, and I think that the way that he's kind of handled himself in discussions in the past, at least during my last, during this time I've been on the commission for the past year, I think Dirk is a good candidate for the position.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations? Ms. Turway, do we need a roll call vote on this, or is a voice vote by consensus okay since there's only one nomination?
Voice is okay.
All right. All those in favor of Commissioner Dirk Schlagenhofer serving as Planning Commission Chair for 2021, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say nay. All right. Motion carries. So do I turn over the meeting right now or after we do vice chair?
Typically, we would do chair and vice chair and then turn it over, but your call.
Okay, all right, we'll go ahead then. Are there nominations for the position of vice chair?
I nominate Mike Mitchell.
Who did that? I didn't see it. Okay, that was Dirk. Okay.
I don't know if that's appropriate, but I did it.
Second.
Okay. Are there any further nominations? All right, seeing none, then all those in favor of me serving as vice chair for 2021, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Okay, thank you all very much. And at this point, I get to mute my microphone. And if I had a beer next to me, I'd probably take a sip of that, but I don't. So, Chair Schlagenhofer, the meeting's yours.
Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell. I appreciate that. All right. We've already called a meeting to order, so I can't imagine we need to do that again. Do we have any public comments on any items not on the agenda?
Nobody has prearranged any with staff.
Okay. All right. Well, then we're going to go straight into the first item on the agenda, and that is Planning Commission hearing GLUA-20-00020 along with CU 20-00002 and SP Site Plan 20-00043. Adoption of findings for conditional use approval of the proposed 30-bed residential memory care facility at 182 Warner Parrott Road. Now, you'll have to help me with this. At the last meeting, the public record was closed.
That's
So
correct.
do we need to go through all that again, or what exactly is the process tonight?
So,
Go ahead, Cameron.
so the record has been closed. The Planning Commission made a tentative decision last time to approve the application. Staff has revised the findings, we believe, to consistently reflect the Planning Commission's decision. So at this point, you do not need to read the public record disclosures, the public hearing disclosures, because we're not going to have a public hearing.
Okay.
Unless you all feel you want to reopen the public hearing. Your options at this point are to approve the findings in support of your decision. And you do that with a motion and a second and a vote. New commission members, unless they reviewed all of the materials to date, should not weigh in on that vote. And we can go around and ask them if they want, or we can just leave them out on the assumption that they have not. Option two is to, we can have discussion about the changes to the findings that Mr. Walter made, and he may have a presentation to share with you about that. And then you can talk about it and then decide what you want to do. The third option would be to reopen the public hearing. Should you decide that the findings do not reflect your position and you want to ask the applicant or members of the public questions about anything.
Okay, well, I reviewed the staff findings. They came out the way I expected them to, but I want to get some input from the other commissioners to see if they feel the same way or if they would like to go deeper into it before we make a decision on it.
Does staff have a presentation at all?
I don't have a presentation, but if you have any questions about the staff report, I'd be happy to go into detail. Most of the findings were revised with respect to the conditional use criteria starting on page 77 of the staff report. And we also added a summary, extended summary of the public comments that have been entered into the record to date, and reflecting all of the public hearings that we've held. And then the most recent one being on the 14th of December, when you made your tentative decision to approve the application with conditions. So I don't have a whole lot to add to what the city attorney has said.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I've got a question.
Sure.
Mr. Walter, the revised findings, do they all relate to our discussion of the possible off-site parking agreement with the church down the street?
Yes, the stipulation about the parking agreement was that that was not approved as a proposal, because the reason being that the application already includes the maximum amount of parking on site. And it also talks about if the applicant wished to do that in the future, they would need to pursue a separate application for adjustment of the parking standards with approval of the Planning Commission.
So the only revised findings that you presented tonight are related to that specific issue?
That, and also factoring in some of the testimony from both the public and the commission with respect to building orientation and shading that was discussed, because there was further discussion of that at the December meeting. And you'll see as you go through the conditional use finding with respect to, particularly with respect to the conditional use criteria for impacts on adjacent properties, we've written more detailed findings for that, which we assume you guys have read.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do we need to make any
Commissioner Stein, go
further
ahead.
motions? Do we need to make any further motions tonight, or are we just simply saying, yes, we're going to proceed with the with approval of the application?
Staff's recommendation, go ahead.
Sorry.
Staff's
So
recommendation.
you're gonna make a motion on the adoption of findings. So you can edit the findings further based on the record that we have. Or you can reopen the record and we can go back to the public hearing, but we're gonna need a motion to adopt the findings consistent with your tentative decision from December 14th.
Okay.
Just to summarize more, starting on page 75 of the staff report, the standard being one of the 5 standards for conditional use approval is that the use will not alter the character of the surrounding area in a manner which substantially limits, impairs, or precludes the use of surrounding properties for the primary uses listed in the underlying zone district. So we go into some detail explaining what the permitted uses are in the R10 district and how the use would not substantially impair or preclude that use. We also talked at some length about each of the various public comments, including concerns about loss of privacy, property value effects, concerns about light and sun and increased shading, concerns about the building size, height, and mass, and how the application needed to balance the dimensional standards for the R10 zone with the requirements for siting of an institutional use, which requires that the building be closer to the public right-of-way. And there had been some discussion about that on December, and the decision was not to change the footprint of that building. because it has to balance those two criteria. Goes into detail on traffic impacts and compliance with the traffic guidelines that we have for the city, parking, and how the proposal meets the minimum and maximum parking requirements for the use, construction noise, impacts to the offsite trees, and those are the main issues that were discussed during the public comment. And we've tied each of those back to the specific zoning criterion that applies, but this is a conditional use application, so it's important that we address that specific conditional use discretionary criteria, which we felt we have done and adequately addressed all the impacts that were concerns during the public hearings.
Pete, do any of the new findings require the applicant to change anything in their application as it currently sits?
Well, we have a condition in there, which is to lower the roof height, which had to do with that, the rear of the roof, and that is condition of approval. I'll have to find it. Hang on. Condition of approval. Reduce the roof pitch from 512 at the rear of the building, and to plant additional evergreen screening trees to appropriately screen the facility in all locations that are closer than 15 feet from the property line. But that does not affect the building. It affects the roof line at the back.
So those findings do not require the applicant to change their building. It just requires them to plant additional trees.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Walter, I had one question. I don't know if we are supposed to talk about it at this point, but conditions of approval number 31, it mentions Oregon City Municipal Code 17-5.56.040 F1. And it mentions that the applicant needs to maintain the applicable licenses for the to get their application approved. What if they don't maintain the license after the building's up? Does it turn into a code enforcement situation, or what's the purpose of that language?
This condition actually doesn't require that they maintain that license because that's not the city's jurisdiction. It requires that during the process of them applying to the Department of Human Services for their operational license, that they provide that information about their facility to the city prior to occupancy.
Okay, I wasn't sure the city got involved in use. I thought it was just design. That's why I was a little confused on that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see that. It's not a requirement to maintain that because we can't enforce that, but
Okay, that's what I thought. All right. And then, number 40, 10-foot wide public utility easement. Didn't we just go through that, and wasn't it 5 foot? Or was it 10? Am I mistaken? Was that a
10 foot is the standard the Public Works Department requires along the front.
Okay, I thought we shrunk it to 5, or was that a different?
I'm not aware of that, but Laura, are you? Okay.
Was those maybe those are the code amendments. All right, forget that. Okay, so I guess the question is the commission comfortable adopting the land use application with the revised findings, or do they want to discuss this more or reopen the public record?
Dirk, I will make a motion that we adopt the findings and proceed with the approval of the application. I'll make that motion right now.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, we've got a motion by Commissioner Staggs, and then who was the second?
Commissioner Mitchell.
Yeah, that was me.
Commissioner Mitchell seconded the motion. All right. Do we call roll?
Perfect. I'm going to go through and call roll. When I get to the new commissioners, I'm going to ask you if you've reviewed the record and want to participate or not. First is Commissioner Gage.
Aye.
All right. Commissioner Staggs,
Aye.
Commissioner Stoll.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Novak, have you reviewed the record and would you like to participate?
Only to a certain degree. I don't feel comfortable making a vote, so I will abstain.
All right. And Commissioner West, have you reviewed the record and would you like to participate?
I've reviewed the record, but I will not participate on recommendation of Carrie Richter, our city attorney.
Okay, so you'll abstain as well.
I'll abstain.
Chair Schlagenhofer.
Aye.
All right, motion approves.
All right. Moving on to our next item on the agenda, which is, bear with me, I've got a lot of papers out here. General business. That's the next one, right? Okay. Opportunity for planning commission input on the city commission goals and or budget. Who's got the report on that?
All right, good evening.
Ms.
Planning.
Turway.
Thank you. So we do budgets on a biennium cycle, and we also do goal setting on a biennium cycle as well. It lasted from summer of 2017 or summer of 2019 to this summer. And in the last biennium, the Planning Commission put forward a comment of what they would like to see as far as either a budgetary request or a goal setting request. We had a couple of meetings on this topic, but since that time, the Planning Commission has since established a mechanism to receive public input. So we had a survey that we had sent out to everyone to ask what they thought their priorities should be. I'm not sure how that changes this discussion. I think there's two real questions. One is, does the Planning Commission feel strong about an issue that you would like to request that the City Commission consider it as a goal for the city as a whole over the next biennium, or a budget request, either? And if so, what are those specific items? The Planning Commission is not obligated to provide testimony, but you may. So those are what's changed since last time. We had the list of items that the Planning Commission discussed, and those are included in the commission report. I also included some tentative timelines for some of the must-haves, some of the must-have things that we need to do from the planning department's perspective is that we should complete our comprehensive plan process and adopt a new comprehensive plan. And as a recommendation with that too, maybe move forward or initiate some of those projects that come out of it. There is a list of projects or topics that we have heard come up throughout the years. We should probably get started on moving through one of those. We anticipate completion of the comprehensive plan, full adoption, finishing the end work of adopting a comprehensive plan by next mid 2022. And then also we need to change our code to comply with House Bill 2001. That's that missing middle House bill. We did those couple years of code amendments ending this year, actually. And we're going to have to go back and make a couple more changes that are required. So we're going to have to compare our code to the new implementation of House Bill 2001 and make some of those changes. We're legally required to adopt that by mid 2022 as well. So as a department, I see us being kind of busy till mid 2022. And then after that, I hope that we should start picking off some of these projects that the community has identified that are important. I'm here to answer any questions, but I think the first question is, does the Planning Commission want to provide a coordinated comment to the city commission for the goal setting retreat, which is at the end of January. It is at the very end of January, so we still have one planning commission meeting left if you guys would like to talk about something as well. And if so, what would those comments be?
Okay, so if the planning commissioners had ideas, would they go to you, or would we work amongst the commissioners to try to come up with a list of goals and then present those? Which way would you like it to go?
We had been, as a group, the planning commission had been working on a list of goals, but that was before the city commission put out the asking everybody in the community for them individually. So we have the list already identified from this planning commission, which was on the commission report, which kind of talked about what I just talked about, as well as some specific topics that we've identified already associated with the comprehensive plan of short-term rentals, looking at tree code, that kind of thing. So you guys should decide if you want to have a coordinated comment to the planning commission. And if so, then I would recommend nominating 1 or 2 people to write that comment. And then if you want to, we can come back at the next planning commission and present it. But you have no obligation to write a comment. So either way is fine.
Okay, and we also have 2 new commissioners, so I wanted to give them the opportunity to provide any input that they may have, something we may have overlooked, or, you know, fresh ideas are always helpful.
No, I have no comment from me at this time.
Okay,
Just
Commissioner West?
Yeah, just to keep affordable housing as a priority. I don't know how
I
that
agree.
plays. I don't know how it plays out with code, and it was in their goals multiple times.
Right, well, we can just keep it on top of the list of, you know, things that we consider important. All right, anything from the commissioners? Anything that we're missing here before we make a decision on how we move with this? Commissioner Mitchell.
You knew I was going to have something to say, right?
Yes.
I've gone kind of back and forth on this thing. I started out thinking about, okay, where did we get asked for the most variances over the last year or two, or what seemed to bring up the most public concern, public comment, and it comes back to the same things: parking minimums and maximums, traffic impact, tree preservation. So I thought, okay, so we should move some of those, try to get some of those on the city commission's radar. But with the exception of what Commissioner West just mentioned, the affordable housing, you know, we went through a lengthy process revising our code to, in theory, help with missing middle housing or affordable housing, whatever you want to call it. But I don't know that we did any good. I don't think. I don't know that anything has happened, and I think it would be a worthwhile effort for the city to look at, you know, are we seeing more applications for projects that fit into that missing middle, and if we're not, what are the feedback that we're getting? Why isn't it working? What do we need to pursue? So that I think that would probably be at the top of my list, but. And here I go. I think it may be the wrong time to give the city commission priorities, because we haven't finished the comprehensive plan update. So we don't know what comes out of that update is going to be different from the comprehensive plan that we have now. And we may see a whole new set of issues where our code doesn't match up with the goals and the policies that we've got in our new comprehensive plan. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to see us chase after new codes, new policy, new procedures until we know what's in that comprehensive plan and what the citizens of Oregon City think we need to change about what we're doing. So I don't know that now's the right time to try to come up with this list. Those are my thoughts. Plus, who knows what the world is going to look like when we get past this pandemic? We may need to have a whole new set of priorities. We may need more parking. We may want to require more outdoor dedicated space. We just don't know. There's so many iffy things. So,
Yeah.
I think we may have the cart before the horse until we know more about the comprehensive plan and what our world looks like.
All right. Thank you very much. Those are all really good points. So the list that we have in the current list that we've got, I don't have it in front of me. I didn't print it out. There was a few things in there. Is everybody comfortable with what we've got?
Mr. Chair, I'd like
Commissioner
to.
Stoll, yes.
Yeah. So the short-term house or short-term rental modification
Right. That
was
on
mine.
there. Okay.
There's a number of arguments I can make for it, and I'm going to make the one that most directly applies to what Commissioner Mitchell just said. There's different ways to make housing more affordable. It's an income versus cost thing. You can vary one or the other. If we make it easier for a person to rent out their spare bedroom, we can very easily affect the income side of that equation,
Right.
and use their home to make extra money in a legal fashion. If we can change the code without having to go through I believe it's a $2,800 hearing. That's a lot of money for somebody to rent out their spare bedroom. There's a number of other arguments I can make, but that's the one that most directly applies to what Commissioner Mitchell just discussed.
Okay, yeah, that is a great one. And I remember in the code amendments, we discussed that and the cost of the permitting process for that, which was pretty much it made it impossible for anybody to do that. So, okay. That's a good, somebody, Ms. West?
So are there, I guess I don't know what the current regulations are on renting out a bedroom in your home. So I like an Airbnb or VRBO. So I'd like to know that a little bit more before I comment on that.
Ms. Turway?
Where the code lies now.
Sure, good question. So where the code lies now is if you're in, for example, we'll talk about a single family residential zone. If I own a house and I would like to rent out a bedroom, if I rent out that bedroom for 30 days or more, I don't need to do any process. It'd just be the same as if I rented my house out for 30 days or more.
Okay.
If I rent it for less than 30 days, then it triggers a conditional use, which requires planning commission approval, which I think is actually a little bit more than the number we referenced earlier. And so it would require comments from the neighbors and the ability to comply with all our conditional use criteria. I can also share the list of the items identified. If you guys do want to make a recommendation, I can share the list from the commission report. And if you wanted to add another one related to affordable housing, I have some language for you as well.
Okay.
So that's where the $2,800 application fee comes in? If it's an over 30 day?
Under
30 days.
And it's like anything like a hotel under 30 days, then you have to go through a special approval process.
So I imagine Planning Commission doesn't have this in its purview, but business license fees, anything there?
It does not have it within its purviews. You would also need a business license in that situation as well. And planning division reviews all business licenses. So we're one of the reviewers to say like, hey, this may need a conditional use or something if we see one that forgot about planning and just submitted a business license.
Parking requirements? Does that go along with it? Off-street parking?
For VRBOs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if what the request from the Planning Commission was, and I think there was some comments about it from the City Commission as well, was to reopen up the process and make it easier to do VRBOs.
Okay.
Or Airbnbs. But yeah, is there a way that you could avoid the whole hearings process, and what criteria would need to be put in place to make sure we got the right amount or the right type, or avoided any impacts on neighborhoods, which would be a little bit of a planning process, I would assume a year, or I don't know, shorter.
Thank you.
And to be clear, what I'm talking about is only for owner occupied structures. If it's a house that you're just renting out short term, that has an impact on the housing stock, and that's a whole separate issue. I'm just talking about owner occupied short term rentals.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Stoll, when you were talking about the that application fee, the conditional use fee, were you talking about short term or long term?
Short term.
We're talking about short term.
Yeah, short term.
Okay, because you mentioned affordable housing, but affordable housing usually isn't short term.
Well, it increases a person's income so that they can better afford the house. Essentially, they're using their home to make money to pay for their home, theoretically.
Okay, all right. You're talking about the income. I understand now.
The income half of the equation. Yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. That'd be something good. Yeah. Was that Commissioner Staggs?
Yes.
Okay.
Going back to what Mike was saying earlier, I wanted to make a comment that I don't disagree with everything he said. In other words, I think he's on track with saying maybe we shouldn't make specific recommendations at the moment. However, the issue that we just brought up with allowing Airbnb or short-term rentals, I believe would be very good and very healthy for the city to allow people to do that, especially right now during the economics that are currently going on, and also long term. So that's my opinion on that. And then secondly, if we look at HB 2001, COVID has sort of put that whole thing in limbo and extended it out. My understanding is that it was meant to actually be, the cities were reconciling the impact of HB 2001. I know that that Oregon City has already started to address some of those things, but I think with HB 2001 and the whole missing middle kind of housing in Oregon City, my opinion is that the Planning Commission, if we were to put forth any recommendations to the City Commission right now for this end of January meeting, that HB 2001 should be a very high priority for the city to implement that, even before we finish even before we finish going through the revised general plan. I mean, I think that is such a critical issue with the state, with the city, with the Portland metro area, that should be at the forefront of the City Commission's activities right now. So that's my opinion on HB 2001.
Okay. Well, I've never regretted, and a question I've asked, I just regret the ones I didn't ask. So if we have an idea that we think is good for the city, I see no problem with recommending it to the commission. And then if they discount it, that's up to them. But it sounds like something that needs to be discussed. And if they want to go further with it, that'll be up to them. But we can definitely put that in there. Ms. Turway, you asked if there was a couple of people that wanted to work on this. What exactly do we need to produce? You asked if a couple of people wanted to write it. What are we writing?
I would suggest a letter or a comment letter to the City Commission. I can share what we had talked about before, which was on the commission agenda as well, and recommend some language, but maybe just some sentences before a bullet point list of items, or,
Okay.
just some context around it.
Okay.
Let me share screen. This is what is,
That's the one,
in the agenda right now. which were the items that we kind of had talked about. I threw some anticipated timelines just to give a perspective of how long these would take. But regarding affordable housing, you could add something like identify, prioritize, and implement strategies to reduce barriers to development of affordable housing. And that may include things such as short-term rentals. When we talk about short-term rentals, I want to make sure that we talk about all of the context of short-term rentals as well. So as a side note, they can be impactful as far as reduction of housing supply for other needed housing as well. So I just want to, since we're having the discussion of short-term rentals, make sure that when we have that project that we're thoughtful about what those impacts are. If everything becomes a short-term rental, it might be harder for people to find places to live. But
Right.
What's
Okay.
what would be? I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
On terms of the anticipated timeline for, say, number 2, or the updated municipal code to comply with the HB 2001. Laura, is there anything that's preventing us from adopting that today? Are there ongoing studies that are being done by the city that, or analysis or evaluation that would prevent the city from adopting that?
what we were waiting for DLCD to come out with some detailed explanation, explaining some of the language in the House bill. So to come out with their model code so we can identify where ours specifically gap from that, just because the House bill itself wasn't as specific as we need it to be. That just came out in December. So the only thing that we're waiting on now is staff capacity.
Staff capacity to review that?
Right, we have no capacity to pick up a new project or do that right now. We need to get further in through the comprehensive plan process, and then we'll start to pick it up. There's some couple things like a historic review board. We're looking at a compatible change project. We're designating trees within the Thimble Creek upland habitat. We are doing some stuff with transportation design or guidelines. We've got a lot of irons in the fire right now and other transportation demand management projects that we're implementing. And so I just need people to implement that project. And so we won't start for a little bit, but we'll certainly are required to be done by June 30th of next year. So we will start at some point. I just can't start yet.
Is that language you mentioned earlier, the interpretation of HB 2001, is that public information?
Yeah, I can send it to the city or to the planning commission if you like, or to you directly, either one.
I think the entire planning commission should have it. Dirk, I mean, does everyone agree with that?
I agree with that.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to read it. Thanks, Laura.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do we have any volunteers to help write it?
I will.
Okay, excellent. Do you mind if I contribute?
Not at all.
Okay, all right. And I hope everybody else would, be involved as much as they want to be. And what's the best way for us to communicate? City email? Okay, all right. Great.
If we have an email chain about this, does that create a public meeting?
Yes.
It does. Okay, thank you.
Yes. So would you prefer we don't do a group email? Should we communicate with one commission member?
So what I would recommend is you Commissioner Staggs and Chair Schlagenhofer, you guys work directly together to create a draft of something, and then we'll come back at the next planning commission meeting in 2 weeks, and then we can share that draft. So if you can get me the draft and within the next week, so I can publish it on the agenda for next week, then we can share it with everybody, and then the commission as a whole has opportunity to revise it and make comments.
All
And
right.
then that will be in time before the retreat, which is at the end of January.
Okay.
So just to be clear, so we're writing a letter of recommendation of things that we think it's important for the city commission to consider at their retreat. And that
Mhm.
list that you just showed us is a kind of template. So what are we actually writing? Are we just writing an introductory paragraph that explains our interests?
Yes, and if you want to add more to it, it sounded like I heard affordable housing come up. So maybe that was some of the implementation. That was some was underneath the comp plan. Sounds like you're pulling that out as a separate item as well. So yes, the intro and the body around it. And if you want to add more details, feel free. And then the other thing is I just want to communicate to the Planning Commission that we do have limited staff and funding abilities. We would love to do 1 million projects all at once, but it's up to the City Commission to get in all of these inputs and identify what our charges will be. So don't be offended if they don't choose all of what our requests are, because they have a lot on their plate that they're getting requests for, and they'll have to allocate staff time as well as funding as needed. So.
Okay. All right, and to be clear, this is the input on the City Commission's goals and or budget for the 2021 through 23 biennium? Okay. All right. Are we moving on to section 4 now, Planning Commission work session topics?
Great. Okay, so I kind of split this agenda item really into two, because what we had heard is what should we be doing in the next biennium? And some of the items that we heard from the Planning Commission are things that I could take care of. It doesn't need to go to a City Commission goals. So it was, I want to provide a space for the Planning Commission to provide input on what you want to do at your work sessions, or how I can fill time if I don't have planning applications to bring before you. What I had heard is a suggestion for a conversation where we can start to suggest that applicants provide 3D renderings. So perhaps there's a broader conversation about are there tools that we need that could help us do our jobs better? And aside from changing the code, we can suggest that people do them. That's perfectly fine. And then the other thing I heard was stats associated with middle housing. I can provide those to you guys through a work session this year. That would be completely acceptable. So you could at least see kind of what the outcome of those code amendments are, knowing that that's just one tool in the toolbox. The next thing is I wanted to figure out, are there specific topics that you would like to have education or training on? Do we want to know more about how we evaluate traffic? Do we want to know more about a particular thing, a legal challenge or something like that? And then are there any work sessions? Do we want to work with any other group on a specific thing? Or is there a specific topic that you guys have in mind for us to bring before you? So I'm taking suggestions for things you want to do in this next year, and then I'll try and add them in as I can.
Okay, and then is there a timeline for this, or is this just whenever a good idea pops up?
All aspirational. So
Okay.
when the timing is right, if it was last year, there was no time to do a work session on anything. So we'll kind of have to see how it comes.
Okay.
I got a question.
All right. Yes, sir.
Laura, can we do a specific work session on a specific part of the city? Or is it all just general sort of, like, say we've identified a particular site or property in the city that we think is, shall we say, needs more attention. Is that something that we can do, where we can say, hey, the Planning Commission of Oregon City would like to just offer suggestions and ideas for a particular property in the city that we think needs attention.
Is it a city-owned property?
No.
I would recommend against it. Because if we want to do a separate planning project to rezone or something like that, we can. The planning commission isn't, economic development where you're trying to work with applicants to come up with a specific proposal. We're looking at sort of broader issues. So in that case, I would recommend against it.
Okay. Yeah, I bring that up because I think there's a couple of very important properties in the city that are pivotal to the city's vibrancy, growth. I can't think of all the words at the moment, that have had a lot of attention in the past that I think that need attention. But I'll reserve my thoughts for another time on that.
Yeah, it might be, if the city commission wants to direct resources for us to work on the landfill site, that might be one of their goals or something. But other than that, I wouldn't go into details about what could or couldn't be there, or if they want to work on the cove or something like that. So it seems more of a priority of the commission or our economic development department. But I completely agree that there are definitely properties that are pivotal.
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner West, you had something?
Well, I just wanted to go back to the three-dimensional drawings. And I supposed to make it a requirement. You're not going to do that, right? Or we aren't going to do that right now. But wouldn't that be an additional cost to applicants? And, it would sure be nice maybe, but we probably would have to balance that out. And if you had an additional cost on it, would it preclude or exclude other, some people from doing work here? Or a couple broad questions.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mitchell.
Commissioner Stagg could probably address this a little better. I probably shouldn't have jumped in there because he's an architect, but I've got $100 software package on my PC that creates 3D renderings from a 2D rendering.
Oh.
It's the tools are there, and I would imagine just in the course of your work, and maybe Commissioner Staggs can address this, that this is something that they're creating anyway for almost any kind of project, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to say something about that, Mike. There haven't been a ton of examples through the past year of our hearings, but there has been a couple that I think would have shed a lot of light on the applicant's material and their application, and would probably have reduced the number of hearings significantly that we have had to go through on a couple of projects if they would have had a three-dimensional drawing showing what was really happening on the property and what their application was, what they were applying for. And I think it's money well spent, and it's very little money to do that stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna add a little bit to that. I haven't done any architecture in several years, but I think it was the last time I had to draw something was about 15 years ago. And you're right, the floor plans and then the elevations, they turn into a rendering pretty easily. The time is spent in trying to put the trees in the right places, and neighboring houses which may not have been in your drawings before, you need to superimpose those in there. But like Commissioner Stagg said, it's money well spent if you save a lot of time. So if you don't have to go through several continuances because people can't figure out what this thing is supposed to look like, and then you go through a lot more hoops to try to satisfy the concerns of the neighbors, they probably spend more money and lots more money in interest than they're having to pay. So I think it's probably minimal, the expense compared to the benefits. So
yeah. Let me just add to that. Let me just add to that all you have to do is go to Google Earth, which is free online software, and you can do a 3-dimensional view of any property. It even shows the trees. It's a little rough, it's getting better and better, but Google now, they have this sort of 3-dimensional technology that shows trees and buildings and streets and everything in there that is free.
Okay.
And presenting that information, I think, as part of an application would be very helpful.
Agreed.
Chair Schlagenhofer?
Yes.
Okay, so my little wish list of work session topics or the 3D
Yes,
renderings. The 3D renderings, I would like to see that. Parking minimums and maximums with maybe some information on what other cities in our area of a similar size do in their codes. I would like to see a work session on that. Possibly a training session, and possibly this would be with the Transportation Advisory Committee. I think we can always use an update on how the traffic numbers are generated. I know we have a couple of new commissioners, and I wouldn't mind a review on that. And the final thing, and if everybody else wants to vote this down, I'm fine with that, but this has been a hot button of mine for a while, and that is the 300-foot notification distance that we do on public notices for land use issues. Is that sufficient? How do we figure that exactly? Is it, furthest corner to furthest corner or whatever? And what do other jurisdictions do? And is 300 feet far enough? That would be another work session topic. But again, that may be just me. And if nobody else thinks we have an issue with that, then I'm cool with that too.
What I agree with that. I know that I've heard from different individuals throughout the city about the posting of the notifications. I would like to see that on a work session.
One thing I'll state about that is that the city commission just talked about this last year. When we did these code amendments, we talked about should we change that distance or not. So I just want to identify that they decided not to change the 300-foot distance, but be happy to do a work session to talk about some of these details and show who we mailed things to, because we have made internal policy changes this last year that don't reflect our code. So we also send it to renters, or we send it to the address and to the property owner if those are different addresses and stuff. So it would be good stuff to go over. But as far as changing the regulation, I just want to highlight that the city commission just discussed this. My time gets away from me, but I swear it was last year, if not the year before, but it was a part of these code amendment packages.
Okay, in that case, is that something we want to have a work session with the city commission on? No? Leave it alone?
Yeah, maybe not, but it would,
Okay,
yeah.
I was suggesting just us.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
all
just us.
okay. Any other ideas?
Next year.
Next year, okay.
Get a little time in the saddle.
All right, what are we doing with these topics? What are the next steps?
All right, I will take these lists and I will guard them, and I will put them with our planning commission agendas so that when there's either light agendas or spaces where we may cancel an agenda, if we have time to staff these issues, then I will put them on. And then as we get, midway through or towards the end of the year, if there's something that you guys would really like, and we haven't done it yet, we can do it. But some of these are easier discussions than others. So the 3D rendering ones, we can get that on pretty quick when there's space.
Okay. Okay, anything else on this agenda item? Okay, I don't see anything. Communications.
Thank you very much. I don't have that much communications. I would say, though, that we are doing an update to the City Commission about how 2020 was. And so I wanted to figure out, since we changed chairs, who should be doing that update. Normally, it's the chair that does the update, but it's about 2020 and it's going to happen within the next month. So just a question to the commission of who should be doing the 2020 update on behalf of the Planning Commission.
Can you
Okay.
articulate what is the 2020 update? What does it entail?
Oh, thank you. Every year, every board and committee goes to the City Commission around winter time and just talks about what they have done the past year. And so it's about a 5-minute update or so. And they just talk about either some challenges they've faced or some good projects that they have been able to work really well on. And so we had sent then Chair Mitchell the list of everything we'd worked on 2020. But since we have this change of chair here, I just want to make sure that I am working with the correct person to give the update for 2020.
All right. Well, since Commissioner Mitchell put so much time into every agenda item last year, is this something you would like to work on, Commissioner Mitchell?
I could do that unless you want to. You're the chair, your call. I'm happy to do it.
All right. If you would be happy to do it, then I would be happy to give it to you.
Oh, all right, I'll do it.
Okay, thank you.
Aside from that, I don't have any other updates aside from we did have our, do you want me to wait? Sorry. We did have our severely rent burdened open house in December. So thank you for everyone who attended that. We put all of our comments. We did an online poll as well to solicit input about what people's experiences were like who were paying more than half their income on rent and what some of those potential causes are and some options to address that. And so we've put all of that on our city website at orcd.org. On the planning department, you can find it through our severely rent burdened community conversation. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Mitchell, was there something else you had?
Yeah, and this has nothing to do, this is not official planning commission business, but it's something that I think the planning commissioners might want to know about.
Okay.
And sometimes it's hard to keep track of all of the public meetings that are going on. And somebody brought up the landfill a few minutes ago. It's my understanding that at their February 1st meeting, that's a Monday night, that the Citizen Involvement Committee is going to be hearing a presentation about a proposal for the land use or for the landfill site. Their agenda would come out a week ahead of time. I don't know that it's going to happen, but the information that I have at this point is that might happen. And if you're interested, might be good to listen in. It's not, I don't think it's not an official proposal yet, right, Laura? I'm sure you haven't seen anything.
They've done a pre-app, but they have not submitted an application. So
Okay.
I'm sure it will come before you eventually.
But that February 1st meeting is the neighborhood meeting that they have to do, correct? I think.
It is an optional one. It is
Okay.
not required.
Okay, thank you. Just thought the commissioners might want to know.
You said that was the Citizen Involvement Committee that you saw that on?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And then Commissioner West, you had something?
Well, to the attorney, then are we getting information ahead of time? Some of us not. Is that any kind of conflict?
No, so you're welcome to go and listen, and what you will then have to do if an application is filed and when it comes before you, you will disclose that you participated in this CIC presentation on February 1st.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else? Oh, yeah. Commissioner West.
My last thing is, I'm sorry, what is the retreat date? I just want to make sure. And next meeting date.
The City Commission retreat.
I mean, no, I'm the planning commission retreat.
I didn't know we had
Did
one.
you say we're having a retreat or a training?
The city commission retreat is January 29th and 30th, I think. I'll have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure. The planning commission doesn't have a retreat, but we will continue with more training. Next hearing might be one of those ones where if it's a low item, we may just have a quick meeting and do a little bit of training in there too, or address some of these items you've already identified. The next meeting is scheduled for January 25th.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, anything else? Okay, we're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome to the planning commission too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.